As I was digging through Isaiah, I stumbled into a passage of scripture in Matthew, completely different than what I was thinking about doing. So the last 3 or 4 days, I'm like, oh, I got to put this together. And I finally got it to where I thought it should be. And I updated, I should tell you that I updated, which is not a good thing to do to your phones and stuff like that sometimes, because I updated it. I still don't know how to use the new update. And yesterday, in about 2 seconds, everything I'd worked on for 3 days went blank. And I thought, that's okay. I can figure this out. Oh boy. So I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And I got to rewrite the entire message for this morning. That's not a complaint. It's just what happened. I also know that something in this message is for us this morning, because I had to work really hard at getting it put together. So I know the old adversary, he kicks his heels up every once in a while. He says, I don't want that. I don't want that happening. And he makes a way for us to quit easy. And I wasn't going to quit easy. I might quit hard, but not easy. So I put this together and asked God to bless it. And he always blesses my messes. And I'm trusting that you'll get a blessing from it as well. First of all, I want to acknowledge Mom's birthday. I've got to do that. Jean Heck gave me permission to call her Mom some time ago. I want to say it was probably close to 54 years ago. Does that sound about right, Mom? Yeah, she's nodding her head. Being that my wife and I have been married for 53 years, I kind of did one more year thinking, and I probably could have done 2 more years now that I think about it, because I grew up as a teenager in this church and she put up with me. Well, we won't talk about that. So a little background on what I'm going to try to do this morning for us, that begins with an understanding of a basic foundation of faith for the Hebrew nation. To this very day, the Hebrew people are taught a little phrase that they call the Shema. The Shema is a declaration that says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." And they put that out there on a regular basis and just kind of let that resonate on everything that they do. Everything that they do, whether they're eating a meal together or whether they're working together on their buildings or whatever it is. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And it was basically a proclamation from God to them that you really don't need to know anything else. Just remember this phrase, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. Whether you're getting ready to get married, remember that phrase. If you base your marriage and your family on that phrase, things will go well for you. If you're getting ready to choose a vocation, remember that phrase. You'll choose a better vocation if you remember that the Lord, our God, is one, always in everything that you do. So I'm saying that with the preface of identifying that all the people that were around Jesus when he walked on the face of this earth had been more than instructed about what their basic belief should be. Hear, O Israel, the Lord, thy God is one, and that's all you need to know. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And studying loving God, the people of Israel, though, especially back in the Old Testament days, got to a point where they loved idols. Can you imagine that? After God had led them through all these incredible situations and circumstances, had helped them cross Red Seas, had removed them from the influence of very evil situations, there were cultures in that day that actually sacrificed their children to their God at the detriment of the others and the relationship as a Hebrew nation. And throughout the time that Israel failed many times, there were times that they succeeded as well when they would get back on track, and they would remember this phrase, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." And they would turn away from the Babylon idols and from the metal objects that they would make and sacrificing their children, and they would turn back to God. They did this time and time and time again, so many times that I would completely bore you with the history and the tremendous challenges that they got themselves into, because it was easy to make bad choices those days. It's unlike today. It was easy to choose a different direction. God loved them so much that he extended to them the privilege and the opportunity to have what we call free will. They have free will to make a decision to be what God wanted them to be or to be what they wanted to be. And sometimes they would make great choices and sometimes not so great. One of the things that God continued to reveal to them over and over again is, I want you to be in a personal walk of faith with me. I'm not Jim, but as God, the Father would say that. Please come to me. Let me help you. Sometimes it's hard to ask for help, isn't it? Sometimes you get to a point where you don't have any other choices than to ask for help. The surgeon said to me, now, here you go. You heard about that the last time I was here. He, in his own very special way, said, we would like to do this. How are you feeling about that? Yeah. I just went through a collapse and all kinds of things physically is going sideways for me. You do what you guys feel like you need to do. Sometimes we make good choices. Sometimes we make bad choices. This morning, I want to focus on an encounter that Jesus had with what I'm going to say, some people that should have known better. Have you ever watched somebody from a distance and thought to yourself, they should know better than that? They shouldn't be doing that. Have you ever wanted to go up to somebody when they've cut in line at the Dairy Queen? And besides a lot of things you could say to them, you'd like to say, you should know better than that. I don't hear people saying that phrase when they get up to the line and talk to somebody. There are all kinds of other phrases, many of which I cannot repeat from the pulpit. But there are some things we ought to know better than. I heard a mom just the other day saying to a child that I believe she was related to, I hope she was, and I heard her say, you should know better than that. And I thought, hey, probably should. But for some reason, he doesn't, or she doesn't, to be fair. This morning, I want to focus on this passage of scripture that is found in Matthew chapter 9, verses 9 through 13. And I'm kind of referencing this passage from the New International Version or the Nazarene International Version, whatever you want to call it. Matthew chapter 9, verses 9 through 13. I do hear some pages turning, which means that this church isn't bringing their cell phones to church, probably, which is good. Matthew chapter 9, verses 9 through 13. It says, as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him. And Matthew got up and followed him. I love how long it took him to do that. He didn't do what Brent and I did when Pastor John called me. He didn't say, yeah, let me pray about that for a minute. It says here, follow me, and he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner, now next scene, Jesus is having dinner at Matthew's house. Many tax collectors and sinners, can't believe that they used that language back there in those days. Sinners. They actually said the word sinners. My goodness. Somebody could get offended, by that language. Many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked the disciples, why does your teacher eat with the tax collectors and sinners? There it is again. On hearing this, Jesus said, this is an earth-shattering moment for these disciples and especially for the Pharisees. It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. Here's that sinners word again. And it's Jesus that's using the word. Having looked at this passage, I'm challenged by what all of us go through when someone is coming to our home for dinner. Man, you should change the subject quick. Yeah, I didn't want to talk about the sinners thing quite yet too much. We'll talk about it, but not too much yet. And when you invite somebody over to your house for dinner, can the house ever be clean enough? I used to tease when I pastored in Enumclaw, I had a group of people in the church there that were very literate, and they spent a lot of time reading a little periodical that we used to have in the Church of the Nazarene called the Herald of Holiness. Is anybody as old as Mom and me that you would remember the Herald of Holiness? Okay. That doesn't make you special. That doesn't mean you got a place in heaven. Just you remember what the magazine looked like. And I used to tease our people that when I come over to their house, I'm going to look around their house to call on them. I'm going to look around the house to see if they had their copies of the most recent Herald of Holiness to make sure that they were getting the subscriptions. Because the denomination was actually calling and contacting us as pastors and saying, you need to have so many new subscriptions in your church for the Herald of Holiness this coming year. And it got to a point where it seemed like, man, they don't really care if I preach on Sundays. They don't really care if I go to Sunday school. They don't care if I take care of my family. They don't care if we complete our building program. But you better have your Herald of Holiness subscriptions up to date. And it became, can you already tell by the tone of my voice, it became kind of a thing we could tease and laugh about. And at one certain time, I went to somebody's house and I knocked on the door to call them, and I heard the lady inside say, "Who is it?" And I said, "It's Pastor Jim." And man, there was some rustling going on and there was all kinds of things happening in the house. And I wondered what might be happening. And she finally came to the door. I'm talking like 10 minutes. Let me stand out there by myself in the cold. She opened the door and I came in, and there was a stack of Herald of Holiness right on the coffee table. And I looked at that and I said, well, bless your heart. And I noticed that they were kind of, I don't know, there's probably a word for this, but I don't know what it is. They were kind of leveraged so that you could see the previous issue dates. And it was just displayed properly. And I thought, that's interesting. Bible was just on that same table right next to the Herald of Holiness. Not that that mattered, but they wanted to make sure I saw it. Everything seemed to be in order. And I wanted so much to go look in their bedrooms to see what was going on there. But it's not very appropriate for the pastor to come to your house and say, hey, can I go in your bedroom? I wanted to go look for the closet. You know, the closet where we put everything when someone's coming over to visit? How about the one? The garage is even better. If you find somebody with a clean garage, they're probably mentally ill. That's a statement I don't know you want to make all the time. What I didn't know is the people in church kind of got together and said, when the pastor comes, everyone take these Herald of Holinesses and put them on your coffee table so he'll see them when he walks into your home. And they had a little conspiracy going on and stuff like that, I thought, well, that kind of backfired. None of them bought any new subscriptions, but they learned how to display their Herald of Holinesses. Sometimes we get the cart before the horse. Can the house ever be clean enough? Do you think your heart will ever be clean enough? You think your priorities will ever be perfect? Do you think your hair will ever be in place? I used to worry about that. God has a wonderful way of blessing you sometimes, doesn't he? He just removed a whole lot of worry from my life, just in a couple of years. What a blessing. And I wonder what he's going to remove from your life, because you're laughing at the bald guy up front. Can the house ever be clean enough? I'm especially challenged by who it is that is coming to the house, who it is that's invited for dinner, who it is that might be having Jesus come to their house. If you can think that through, how would you prepare for Jesus coming to your house? How clean would your house need to be? He just walks on water and feeds thousands of people. With a boy's lunch, he heals people of every disease. And in the verse 1 of this chapter, he heals a paralyzed man brought to him by friends of that same paralyzed man. He came to Jesus on an old dirty mat, and because of the faith of his friends and his faith, he left walking, carrying that dirty mat. How clean would you get your house if you knew Jesus was going to come for dinner? My wife and I had to clean the house before we left to come here. When I say my wife and I mean my wife and I clean the house before. I've never been that guy that says, I won't vacuum, I won't wash dishes, I won't in the list, put your list in there. I've always tried to be that guy that said, I'll help do some of these things as you're doing the things that need to be done, and I'll complement what you need. And my wife's here, so you can talk with her after the service. And does he really vacuum? Does he really clean around the toilets? Does he really clean the house? How clean do you think we were trying to get our house before we left? Oh, why were you cleaning it? You weren't going to be there. Oh, but somebody was going to come and stay at the house while we were gone. And we wanted them to think that they were living in a perfect house, I guess, because we sure cleaned it up nice for them. I've often told my wife, why don't we wait till we get home to clean the house, and then we can enjoy it better? But it never seems to work out that way. We used to have a conversation regularly following worship service about people coming over to the house for dinner. Who's coming for dinner? I got into a lot of trouble in my early pastoral years, specifically in Vancouver, Washington, when I would invite people to come to the house, but I didn't let my wife know. My wife's a really good cook, and she cooks almost always a lot of extra food when we had people over, or if we didn't know we were going to have people over. But then she'd find out, like in the last minute, oh, the Smiths are coming. I'm going to pick on the Smiths. I don't know if the Smiths are here this morning. I don't know if there are any Smiths or Joneses or whatever. But every once in a while, I would inform my wife, oh, by the way, Verl and his friends are coming over after church. Why didn't you tell me? Oh boy, there were some interesting conversations that happened at the house. And I'm the pastor, so you can't get mad at me because I'm the pastor and I do everything perfect. Where's Pastor Steve at? He's back there somewhere. He probably heard that. I do everything perfect. All pastors do. He'll have something to say about that, I'm sure. My point is just this, and I hadn't really thought about it before. In this passage I read to you, who came to that meal? Who came for dinner on that Sabbath day to have dinner with Jesus? Who's coming for dinner today? Tell you, if you miss it, you're going to miss out on some excellent soup that all my sister-in-laws have been cooking. We've been smelling soup for 24 hours in the house where we're staying. Smells good. Not complaining about it. But I hate smelling when you can't eat it for another day and a half or 2 days. And then another sister-in-law sent over a sample of soup to make sure. I think he wanted to make sure I liked it, if I'm not mistaken. No, I don't think so. I don't think she cared whether I liked it or not. Who was at the dinner? And what was going on at the dinner? Matthew, the disciple, had just accepted a call from Jesus to become a disciple. Matthew was a tax collector. Matthew was a wealthy young man. Matthew had a lot of leverage, political leverage in the community. Matthew had a lot of power in the community because of his vocation and job. Matthew got a lot of bribes with a tax situation. Matthew controlled the list that said paid, unpaid for taxes. How popular do you think Matthew was? I would sort of wanted to get to know Matthew on a first-name basis. I want to get close to Matthew, no matter what happens. So who came to the dinner that Jesus was invited to by Matthew, who had accepted the call to become a disciple and discontinued practicing tax collecting? He stopped his vocation, perfectly stopped it to turn around and go a completely different direction in serving the Lord. But when he got his dinner time invitation together, who did he invite? His friends that didn't pay their taxes, that only wanted to know him so that they could get out of paying their taxes. Who did Matthew invite? His neighbors, who probably weren't the best example of how to practice the Shema that I taught you at the beginning of this message. They didn't care about the Lord thy God being anything. They just wanted to do their own thing. Who was there as Matthew's guest to be part of that dinner? Oh, and I use that word several times. The sinners of the neighborhood were there. This is an interesting dialogue and problem for the church today. The contemporary church today is sitting in the precipice of making decisions on how we take care of people who were invited to the dinner. And the Pharisees, the perfect people, the people who were in charge of the law, the people who made no mistakes in their life. And I'm going to go as far to push this to make my point. The church people were there to watch to see who showed up for dinner. And it was the church people that looked at Matthew and said, "Why does your master eat with sinners?" And I love the response. And I see this happen as one of the heartbreaks of my life as a pastor. You'd work really hard to get new people to come, and the new people will come, and not in this church, because this church is perfect and we don't have any problems here. But the new people would come, and the old people would say, "Who invited them? Who said they could come here?" I'm not going to do it. This is our church, and we worked really good to keep it perfect. And now you invited these people to come? Oh, my aching back. Kyle comes to church. Kyle's about 6'2", weighs a whole lot. And there's not a whole lot of fat, whatever that term is for the health people. What is it, Andrea? What is it? Muscle something. Yeah, they measure to see how much your content of your fat is, and they have a way to blend all that together. I don't know, all that stuff. Yeah, that, whatever. And Kyle's tatted up pretty heavy. Do you know what that means? That means he's got ink on his body. And it starts around his neck. It goes up over his head. One side of his face is done, and then he's got a little bit on a cheek on the other side. He doesn't wear long sleeve shirts, but he always looks like he's got one on. I didn't look around this morning to see how many tatted people showed up. And that's not the point. The point is that Kyle kind of stands out, especially for us old white folk that show up in the church, and we think it's our church. And little by little, over the years, over the months, we're getting broke away from all this possession theology. Boy, there's a good term. Possession theology. Pastor John, have you studied that lately? Probably not. It's just a term I just came up with. Possession theology. I've been here the longest. I have a right to have my say. I have a right to control. I have a right to say no about everything that's happening. That's my right, because I've been here longer than you have. Because look at me. I'm privileged. I can tell you, my mom, that's 95 today, has never once had a discussion with me about privilege and her rights in the church. Can I brag about you? I'm gonna. She surrendered those rights to Jesus, because he's in control, not the Gene Heck Foundation. Is there a foundation? I don't think so. With all that being said, when Kyle came to the church the first few times, I knew him from some other scenarios in the community. Remember, I used to be the cop chaplain. And he came up to me, like to scared me to death. And he put his arms around me and said, "Man, it's good to see you, Pastor Jim." Actually, he called me Padre, because that's what they called me on the street. "Padre, it's so good to see you." And I was kind of like wanting to go, "Shh, don't tell anybody I'm here. I don't want them to know about who I am out there." It's my little secret ministry that I had in the bars and in the taverns. I'm one of the few Nazarene pastors was ordained by the Church of the Nazarene to be a first responder chaplain and to go into the bars. We need chaplains in the bars. Don't get carried away with that. Don't tell anyone you heard that here. And don't tell anyone I said it, because they'll take all my paperwork away from me probably. I'm just kidding. You guys don't think that's very funny? I do. And when Kyle greets me at church, it's most always in a bear hug and close to a kiss on the forehead, because my forehead comes right to his chest just about. "I'm so glad you're here." And there's a lot of folks in the church that kind of go, "Wow, who is that guy?" And he doesn't know any better than to bring his friends with him to come to church. So now we've got 2 or 3 rows of Kyle's friends. One of them's Chase, and I could go on and on and on with all the different names. Chase was the one that called me up to go to the park. "I'm retired, don't you know?" "Pastor Jim, what are you doing?" "I ain't doing nothing. I'm retired." He said, "Can you come to the park? I don't feel very good." That's his language to me that says, I'm having some suicidal thoughts. And I say to him, before I go to show up, I said, "I need to ask you a few questions. Are you carrying anything? Do you have anything on your personhood that could cause harm to yourself or to me? Can I ask you that?" He knows I'm going to ask that. I said, "If you do, just leave that at home." So I show up at the park and I pray with Chase. That's a different prayer time, let me tell you. It's not your average come to Sunday morning AM service prayer at the altar here. It's a whole different type of prayer time. He's even used some vocabulary in that prayer time that I don't use. So what do I do when he's using that vocabulary? I say, "Hey, stop, you can't talk like that in front of God." I say, "God's big enough to stop him. He can stop him right now, real quick." I don't correct any of those guys. I just let them be them. See, what I think the world is looking for is an opportunity to come to dinner and not have people pass judgment on who we are and what we do. Am I the only one that believes that way? I've been in places where you can feel the tension with different groups of people. And I've also been in places where nothing about the person that was represented in those clothes discouraged anyone from loving them right where they were at. So when Jesus says to them, the people that are here are the ones that are sick. My grandkids helped me with the sick thing. Grandkids were over one day and they were all talking about something, and one of them looked at the other one and said, "That's sick." And I thought, wow, And the other one said, "Shut up." And now I'm going to get an education on their vocabulary. And the more they talk, the more confused they got. I said, "Wait a second, what's the sick thing? What? That doesn't sound good. To me, when you were sick, that wasn't good. Never was that good." "Oh, sick is good now." "Oh, sick is good. Okay, I get it." And it doesn't take too long until you start hearing some of these kinds of things that are being said and watching the people that come until you start passing judgment and you start getting caught up in this whole misunderstanding of who got invited to dinner. Matthew didn't know any better and invited his friends. Mom didn't know any better and she invited her friends today. Some of you don't qualify to be here. Sorry. So that's not fair. I didn't come down here to have some bald-headed guy tell me I don't qualify to be here. Don't feel bad. I don't qualify either. All of us stand on the same ground that's at the foot of the cross and it's level. No one's better than anyone else. We have a lot of Hispanic people that are coming to our church, a lot from Venezuela. Have you heard of that place? A lot from El Salvador. And me habla español muy poquito. So I do my best to speak to them as best as I can with what little Spanish I have. And I'm trying to learn more. Why? Because that's important to them. And I think it's important to God. They would at least try to meet people where they're at. So are you going to get into politics and stuff like that too this morning? No, that'll be the next time I come to speak. And this will probably be the last time I come to speak. So who's coming to dinner? Who would you invite to dinner? Who should you be inviting to dinner? The people who are hungry. The people who need a physician. That's what Jesus said. If you need a physician, you're welcome to be here. Well, what does that mean? You're sick. You're sick just like everyone. We want you to be part of what's going on here. This church believes that. It's believed that ever since I was a teenager in this church. How do you know? Because they invited me to come. That's how it worked. And boy, am I glad I did, because there was a real pretty 16-year-old young lady that was here. And she's still pretty. I'll get in trouble here if I don't be careful. She's still beautiful. And I got a chance to get close to her, and she's been my bride for 50, hope I get the day right, 53 years. So who comes to dinner? It's a simple question, and you've made a whole big deal out of this little bitty passage of scripture. I don't know how you got all this stuff out of it, but the people that were in the Hebrew community had problems with other people trying to come into their little clique, and it wasn't working. Why does your master meet with these people that are sick? What's wrong with him? Doesn't he know better? And Jesus would say, I've come to seek and to save those who are lost. In my reading recently, I ran into this little illustration I'm going to try to reflect on real quick, and then we're done. When I first encountered Jesus, the following illustration helped me to understand what Jesus achieved for you and me on the cross. The two people went through school together, these two young men, and university, high school and college. And they developed a very, very close friendship. Life went on, and they went through their separate ways, and they lost contact with each other. One went on to become a judge. while the other's life spiraled downwards and out of control, and he ended up being a criminal. One day, the criminal appeared before the judge, happened to be his friend from the past. He had committed a crime to which he pled guilty. The judge recognized his old friend and faced the dilemma which in effect God faces with you and I. The illustration is not an exact one. Our plight is worse. The penalty we face is death. The relationship is closer. It's our Father in heaven and ourselves. And He loves us and He cares about us. And He wants us to be in a right standing, a right relationship with Him. The cost is great when we turn our back against God. It costs God far more than money to help us get back into a right standing with Him. So the judge, who used to be the young man's very close friend in high school and college, saw the need to pass judgment on his friend. He assigned the fee that he had to pay for the crime that he had committed. It was a large amount of money. And after he assigned that fee to him, he got up from his judge's seat, from behind the honored desk that he sat at, and walked down beside the bailiff and stood side by side with his friend. He took out his checkbook and he wrote out a check. And he gave it to the young man, now standing beside the judge. He said, "This pays your fine for the crime that you committed." Got back up, went and sat down in his little special judge seat. If we're willing to pass judgment on someone that has started coming to worship with us, are we willing to pay their fine? That, in fact, is what we're doing when we pass judgment on them. Aren't you glad that somebody paid the price for you? I am. Well, Jim, you deserve that because you're perfect and you don't have any problems. And you're a pastor, and pastors never cause grief. Ask my kids how perfect I am. One of them's here this morning. I have to be careful. But I ain't perfect. I've made my share of mistakes. The thing that gives me hope is I have a God that loves me enough and so much, no matter what I've done, He's still willing to welcome me to the table. Who's invited to dinner? You are. I am. Even Pastor John. Oh man, that's a reach. But even Pastor John. Oh, hold on to your seats. Are you ready? Even my sister-in-laws are invited to the dinner. Wow. But you want to hear another reach? Even my brother-in-laws are invited to the dinner. And my mother-in-law is the one that's having the dinner. You know how many mother-in-law jokes that I could have told this morning? None. I don't have any jokes about Mom. She's been that kind of an example to me. Father, we thank you for your love and grace to us. We most certainly don't deserve it. We can't earn it. Lord, help us to realize and to remember it's only by grace, your grace, that we even stand in this special place we call a church. But we know, Father, that the real church is the people sitting in the pews and standing in the back. That's the extension of your grace to all of us. God, help us. Father, help us to remember that we have a God that is one, the Lord thy God, and that's all we need to know. And we can come to you all the time. Thank you for your love and grace to us. Thank you for helping us to enjoy our meal today as we go to the dinner. And you have removed all of the calories out of those soups for us. And we praise you for that in Jesus' name. Amen.